Shoot.
Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more. Sponsored by Gus Curran's House of Champions.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Board Report, brought to you by Indian River Connections. I'm Joanne Binford, and joining me today is John Karapi.
Hey, what's going on? How you doing?
Good. How are you doing? We have a kick butt show today, don't we?
Right. We got another great lineup. I mean, that's what we bring. We bring a great group of people, local people in town that, have a story to tell. So who do we have tonight?
Well, we've got John Chamberlin, owner of Dude Ranch Recovery House, George Cologne, addiction coach, and Patrice Bose, director of Voices for Children.
Nice. That's good.
Yeah, so today's show, we're going to explore the role of sober homes in supporting recovery from recovery and addiction. And then we're going to discuss a lot of things like what to look for in a well-managed sober home. And is there value in the county funding sober homes? Remember, the hospital district bought that property and they wanted to make a 30-bed unit for women, for women to have sober living. And then we're going to tap into the importance of effective management and accountability, especially when public funds are involved in something like this. And later on in the show, everybody stick around. We'll discuss child trafficking and how it's impacting our community. These are really important subjects, and our community is growing. A lot's happening. Economics is playing a role. People need help, and we're going to learn a lot today, right, John?
Yeah, you got to follow the money. We got to know where the taxpayers and policymakers intersect, and that's why the Board Report has been developed, and that's why we do this show every Friday at 7 p.m. Brought to you by Gus Curran's House of Champions.
Yeah, so stick around. We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Tired of the same old workout? Come knock out your fitness goals at Gus Curran's House of Champions. Founded in 1996 right here in Vero Beach, Florida, our Hall of Fame trainers will push you to your limits and beyond. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, we have the perfect class for you, including the one-of-a-kind rock-steady Parkinson's training. So come join the fight and unleash the champion inside you. Give them a call, 772-713-1157, or go to gchouseofchampions.com.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Board Report. I'm Joanne Binford, joined by John Chamberlin, owner of Dude Ranch, and George Cologne, addiction coach. Let's bring them on board. Hi, guys. How are you?
How you doing, Joanne? John?
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This is really an important subject, and the both of you are doing wonderful work. So, John, share a bit about your background and what inspired you to open the Dude Ranch.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having us. I'm not a counselor or anything, but I've been in recovery for a good many years, over 30, and my experience was I moved to Vero Beach, a retired man. This was 15 years ago, and like many retired people, I got a little needed something to do, so I went to work for a local treatment center. And we did have one here in Vero Beach called the Gate Lodge. It was part of Hanley Center, and after working there for a while, I saw the need for a sober living house for men. It was a 12-step program based. Getting men going to their meetings, getting them a sponsor. They're doing really well. And then suddenly their insurance is gone and now it's time for you to go. And many of them had kind of plopped in Vero Beach and wanted to stay, and we're starting to get recovered. So I opened up the Dude Ranch. That was back in 13.
Wow.
And I didn't have any training or anything. I just know that back in my early recovery, I lived in a sober house. Actually got kicked out of one and eventually made it through another treatment and got to stay in another one. So my experience had been as a client of a sober house, but here 30 years later or 25 years later, I saw the need. And part of what helps me in my recovery is being able to share my experience with others and to continue to participate in the recovery community. I quite frankly, when I started it, I thought it would only last a couple of years, and here we are. It's gosh, what is it, 13, 14 years old now. We're still doing it, and I'm just going to do it as long as the good Lord allows me to and directs me to do that. So here we are.
Well, thank you. And George, give our audience a quick background of your history and what inspired you to work in the recovery field.
Well, I went to New York City in 2010, and I was in a recovery program in started 2005. And I had one of my mentors tell me, take these courses, because in the field of addiction, there's a lack of training. And we'll talk about that. I have data. I'm a data guy. And he inspired me to do that. And I met some women and men who were very dedicated in the training. And so that's how my journey began almost 15 years ago. And so we work with people who are trained. If they're not trained, then that's an issue for us. And I work in the private sector.
Right,
So
right.
it was different. In the non-private sector, it's almost, with some of them, anything goes. And we could talk about that too. Not all of them, but many of them. And you know my experience here working with sheriffs and federal agents and trying to get some awareness about some of the shenanigans. But we'll talk about that as we go.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for the work you do. And, John, I've heard you're running a successful sober home, and that's why I wanted to bring you on, because sober homes are coming up. And like George said, they're popping up. We had one pop up in our neighborhood, and that's what really made me realize, wow, I had a sober home in my neighborhood and I didn't know. And we noticed a little bit of different traffic in our neighborhood, but all of a sudden there's an ambulance outside, there's a fire engine outside, and we have a little small community. It's a very intimate community where everybody knows everybody, but suddenly we had this house and we didn't know what was going on. And it kind of makes your neighbors and everybody else feel a little bit uneasy. And then I heard about the hospital district wanting to open up a 30-room for women and using taxpayer dollars for that. So it really sparked an interest. And I was like, okay, well, people do need to recover.
Yes.
But what's going on where you have a sober home that ends up in your neighborhood and you have no clue what's going on until some tragedy happens? And then you're like, what happened? Why are all these ambulances there? So I started investigating and just getting more curious. And I heard that you're doing a really good job. You're running a successful sober home, and it's a smaller home. So I thought you would be the great advocate to talk about it and teach us about this so that we can understand better how these sober homes are going in, what's the best way to have a sober home, do they have restrictions? So there's a lot of questions we're going to have for you today.
Good. Well, I'm glad to help and answer any that I can.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Well, running a sober home, you're absolutely right. There's a huge need for sober living. Unfortunately, especially here lately with the opiate problem that we have in the United States,
fentanyl,
the need of people to have a place that's safe and clean, and they can begin their recovery, whether in a 12-step program or anywhere else. That need is there, and it will always continue. I was very interested for you to tell me about the hospital and working on one for women, because I get calls of women that are looking for a place. My sober house It's actually called the Vero Beach Sober Living Residences. And we just call it the Dude Ranch because, quite frankly, just a little story. When I moved down here, you can tell I'm a little older, and I can't remember anybody's name, so I just call everybody Dude. And so that kind of stuck, that kind of stuck. And I don't mind it because it also makes me more approachable. One of the problems with people that are in recovery, and I've been through all this too, is we're isolated. And I loved it when you called me and invited me because part of your show is called Connections. And connections is what we alcoholics and addicts need. Many of us get to a point to where we're alone in our addiction, and it's a terrible place. So I think one of the things that makes my house so I don't want to say that it's good. It just is what it is. But we've been successful because we take the time to connect with the clients that are there. At one time, I had 2 homes and I had 12 people, and I'm a single guy, and I'm doing this, and it was like herding cats, So I actually got rid of one of the homes so that I could focus more clearly on the men that were there and starting, sober living houses, they pop up all over the place, and they can be quite an income producer. And so there are some of the shady people out there that will open these sober houses just to pack people in, take their money. And even there's some places that actually have agreements with treatment centers and detoxes, and they almost kind of rotate around, and it's a dance, but it's a deadly dance. I don't know. Some of the listeners, I would suggest that most of the listeners know somebody or have someone in their family that's been affected by the disease of alcoholism or drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It is rampant, and there is help. There is a way to get out, but there are a lot of shady characters too. So you want to stick with the people who are doing the right thing for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I started the Dude Ranch back in 2013, and it was difficult in the beginning. I had the cops show up, and you say it's a good night when the helicopter comes out, I joke about that now, but that was a part of the experience. But as time went on, I became better at it.
And
George knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said that about the homes, where they circulate people in, and it's a good moneymaker, because one of the neighbors spoke to the person that has that house here in our neighborhood, and they actually recommended her to do it because it's an income bringer.
Yeah,
and it's an easy income bringer is really the choice of words that they used with her. So she just was like, well, that just makes me believe that he's not doing it for the right reason, which made her more concerned, rather than coming off like your approach, which is very kind and concerning. Like, you could have kept your 2 houses and all those people, but you were like, no, I really want to give back and focus and give these men what they need. And that comes from a person who's doing it for the right reasons.
You absolutely have to do it for the right reasons. I've talked to many people who want to start one. They ask me, how do I do it? And the first thing I'll ask them is, are you in recovery? And I've had people say, no, I just want to make some money. And I'm saying, well, what do you have to offer these people? What experience do you have that you can sit down and hold a guy's hand and tell them that it's going to be okay, and work with these people? Just a little thing that I did when I first started this thing out. I wanted to make sure that I did it for the right reasons. And this is kind of private, but what I did was I paid for the house totally so that I would not have a mortgage. And if I did not have a mortgage, I could kick anyone out at any time and not feel the financial pressure of having to keep some people in for the wrong reasons. And that's something I think that a lot of sober houses deal with. They get used to the money. They have to pay the mortgage. All these things are going on, and they may look the other way when somebody is not doing what they're supposed to do.
Right. That's a
I did want to bring up one other thing. I am just a single guy, and I'm doing this just out of my own, personal deal. But there is an organization here in Florida. It's called the Florida Association of Recovery Residences, and I joined in 2018. They had just got it started, and I joined as so that I could become legitimate, so to speak. This organization, they've grown quite a bit now. They have a website, which is FAR, FARR online, and anybody can go there to find sober living houses. They have, I think, over 150 of them through the state of Florida to find a place to go. I get inspected every year. There are requirements that I have to go. I need to abide by the guidelines that are set by FAR, which is a Florida organization of the national organization, NAR, which is the National Organization of Recovery Homes. So that legitimizes it. And they've even made some law changes here in the state of Florida that if you're running a treatment center, you cannot suggest a sober house that is not FAR certified. And that just happened in the past few years. So the government is always trying to get their hands into things, and we all know that. And but this organization keeps us honest, and it keeps us doing it for the right reasons.
That's good. George, I wanted to ask you, so you've built an impressive career as an addiction coach with certifications in counseling, peer support, mental health first aid, and addiction recovery. What concerns do you have about sober homes that operate under the radar and aren't easily found online?
First of all, I want to thank you, and I want to thank John, because this is something that's been needed. As you know, my observation and the studies and my training, a lot like what John said. What is the motive of people really doing this? It boils down to that. And I've always had great respect for John. And I will say this, the accountability factor that he has. And so he's one of two out of almost 25 I recommend in Vero. One of two out of almost 25 in Vero. How do I know they're two? Yeah. So, so what I observe in my training after going to Washington, D.C. in 2021, meeting federal agents, my family's ex-FBI, DEA, and I met some of them, and we did discuss the fentanyl thing. But we also talked about how wretched some of the sober living arrangements are. Follow the money instead of motive and purity. So I had talked to the director of DEA, Derek Maltz, who's a friend of mine. And I said, I know you got your hands full now, but I would like you and Don Bongino to really help me address this. I have every location in Vero, all those who supposedly run them, and all this data. Here in Indian River County, they don't want to hear it. And I'm a truth teller. So the sheriff doesn't want to bother with it because he's got other things going on. And I'm going to be nice and respectful. The police chief, same thing. He doesn't want to bother with it because he's got other things going on. So I said to them, when someone dies in your family from an overdose or fentanyl, I hope they ask me to be a witness. And we will get all the money from the police department or sheriff's department, and we will sue you for every bit that you have, because I'm bringing you data and I'm bringing you information. So we have a letter and I have the email. I collect data to give, Justice Department and federal agency back in 2022. The sober homes issued by the sheriff and current sheriff was supposed to be addressed. Still not. An article came out in 2023 that I recommended. I was interviewed about addressing the sober homes and some of the shenanigans with most of the sober homes. It went death. So I said, let me do my due diligence. I went to the building department. There are criteria that have to be met. Most of them don't meet them. Let me just say that. John's does. Most of them don't meet them. There are criteria for sober home and sober living. That hasn't been addressed. So I reached out to DeSantos, Tallahassee, and legislature, and I said, you guys got your hands full. an article came out on April 2025, finally, about the Florida House passes mental health substance abuse bill, which addresses some of the shenanigans in sober homes.
Oh, that's HB 1091 to
Correct.
regulate
Yes,
CCF.
correct. Then a nicer one came out from Tallahassee, which is from, what they're saying, that all of them need to be vetted. The lack of training in them, those who operate them are not trained. And then even some of the people use, again, that happens, I get it, but they still are employed. And also the factor that there is no criteria with most, that they can just be sober 6 months and now you run the house. They don't really, and John understands this, they don't know, they don't detox medically for a year. Medically for a year,
You
medically.
mean it takes a year to go through the detox? Is that what you're saying?
Minimum.
Minimum.
Medically. That means from the heart and the whole inside the brain. Most people don't know that because they don't study, right? So if they don't study, I get it. They don't know it. But those of us that have studied know that, and we know that could be a danger for some. So, but like what John has said, and I'll go back to what he said, is some people do it for the money. I'm not very fond of them. They would be
Right.
the first ones that I would recommend FBI and DOJ to go after. Why? Because they're doing more of an injustice and helping people, and these people are humans.
Right, because those people are more like victims because they're really not getting the service and they're taking their money, and they're trying to get their lives together, trying to, get to that point where they're stable enough to go out on their own. George, I was wondering how long, and now that not now that George, that you brought it up, I was wondering how long do they usually stay in a sober home? Or maybe this is a better question for you, John. How long do they stay in your sober home?
That's a good question. And, just to kind of, before we go to that, touch on what George said, I've heard sometimes 2 years, on some of the opiates it takes 2 years. And that's just the physical part. You still have the spiritual and the mental part that you have to work through as well. So, but in the contract, I've got a 9-page contract that all of my men have to sign. And I do an extensive interview with them to make sure that they're willing to do it. One of the things I'm most afraid of at the Dude Ranch is that I don't want to be considered a flop house. And many of the places that are problematic are just that, flop houses. In my contract, I ask that all of the people that come into the Dude Ranch, that they obligate to stay for at least 7 months. I prefer them to stay for a year. That we find is better for them. They can get their feet wet in their recovery program, become experienced. And addiction and alcoholism, very few of us understand really how dangerous it is and how often it comes back. I have a very small place. 6 people is full, and 3 of them have been there for over a year. 2 of them for over 2 years, and I often wonder if it's too nice of a place. I can't get rid of them, but I'm not trying to get rid of them. What we're doing here is we're giving them the opportunity to do what I've had the opportunity to do. My house manager, he's been there for multiple years, and he doesn't want to leave. He's in his 60s. He's a retired man. Financially, he's fine. And he serves as a great mentor for the younger men who come in. So he gets to enjoy the experience of helping the people that, like I helped him, many years ago. And so that's the way this thing works is we receive help in the very beginning with our addiction, and we hope we can get to a point to where we can help others. And so that's what's happened at my house. I've got, a couple of guys that are there so that they can help the young men that come in. And we've had men that have come in with no clothes, no food, no anything. And one of the things that I'll tell them is, you're not going to starve to death here. the guys that are there, they've changed their attitude. They've had a spiritual change, and they've become different men than when they came in. That's the whole idea. And it's not just the Dude Ranch. All I'm doing is providing a safe, clean, supportive environment for them to live in. And with that, with them going to their meetings and so forth and so on, they're able to become the men that the good Lord is made them to be. And I have gotten so much more out of being part of the Dude Ranch than any of the finances or anything. It helps me stay sober, and I'm the most important person I am to me.
Right, right. It's
I have
good.
to stay sober before I can help anybody else. So,
It's good that you're doing that. Well, George,
Yeah.
what did I see? You're ready to go.
And it's interesting what John said, because you see the amount of people he said. He's got 6.
People.
I've been in some of these homes, they got 15 or 20.
mhm.
Wow.
According to the building department, you have to have a full facility, bathroom, shower, tub for minimum 3 to 5, not an outhouse.
Mhm.
And that's going to be exposed too. So you could see the difference. Now, some of the people that didn't respond to your calls, Joanne, they know my family are federal agents. So they know that this is going to be exposed, right? So they don't want to be accountable. But see, John does nothing. John has nothing to hide. That's why I have great admiration and respect. So, it's amazing. This is just a prelude to what we're going to talk about next with Patrice. So most people don't know this. There is human trafficking and sex trafficking in some of the sober homes. I know that. I have the data, I have the people, right? So they don't want to address that either, because you follow the money that impedes. There's a young woman I met, and she had no credentials. She had a brand new car, all clothes. She gets all the clients for a few facilities here. And I asked her, I said, tell me about you. She was 3 months clean, making more money in a month than I make in a year.
Wow.
How is that?
Yeah. How is that?
So I called the facility that uses her services with no credentials. Oh, by the way, out of state, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, New York. She gets these clients from all over the country. That's human trafficking. It's just,
Wow.
it's going to happen. But the
Well,
reality is, like John said, he has no concern about the money. His motive is to help other people, hope they get better and go on and live their lives.
mhm.
There's some people who don't have that mindset. And what happens is they know that they are put on notice, so they have to go and try other angles. And to me, that's a discourteous thing to do to another human being, because
Mhm.
every
It
human
is.
being needs the opportunity to get better, whether it's a she or he. And I'll end with this. I was somewhere in a meeting, and I had mentioned to you, Joanne, in a facility that has quite a few, I was talking to an individual, and someone bought crack in the place.
Mhm.
And the individual felt, they were tattletaling. I said, well, it's better you tell them than you tell me. She goes,
Mhm.
why? I said, I would have the FBI there and DEA. Not only that, you might have saved their life. So
Absolutely.
some of these facilities, those things can happen. I get that.
Right.
But like John had mentioned, there has to be an accountability factor.
Absolutely.
If there's no accountability factor, then we're not providing a safe place for those who maybe want to really get their act together.
That's
And
right.
to me, that's a form of injustice.
Well, yes. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank
I
you.
do
Thank
need
you.
to end it here. However, I invite you both to hang out in the backstage and join us for the panel discussion in the last segment of the show. Okay.
Gotcha.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you
Thank
again.
you. Thank you, John. Thank you,
Thank you,
John.
George.
All right, stay tuned. Our next guest is Patrice Bose, Director of Voices for Children. And that's going to be another great episode here coming up next. And we'll be discussing the needs of today's youth living in difficult times and financial situations and the realities of child trafficking. So we'll be right back after this commercial.
Warrior Shield Foundation is here to unite, honor, and provide support for veterans, first responders, and Gold Star family members. The foundation will enable them to find the help they need through direct assistance or by connecting them with our Shared Vision Network. Using data-driven models, we provide solutions that make a long-lasting difference. We, along with our partners, are dedicated to bringing together like-minded groups and individuals who have committed to making a difference in the lives of our hardworking, everyday heroes. We bridge the gap by connecting warriors or their families with the assistance they deserve and require, such as service dogs, wheelchairs, counseling, scholarships, and team building retreats, to name a few. You can help right now to make a difference for those who have helped and protected us all. Warrior Shield Foundation, selflessly doing for those who need it most.
It's a long way to home, but you won't take the hard road all alone. Just look to your left and look to your right. You were born to fight.
Welcome back to the board report. I'm Joanne Binford, joined by John Chamberlin and Patrice Bose, Director of Voices for Children. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you
We're
so
getting
much.
a lot of feedback there.
Yeah, that's feedback's rough. I don't know why it's so bad like that.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad before the stage.
All right, we'll have to go with it. Yeah.
Ooh, that is loud. Hold
Yeah,
on.
Is there anything we can do with that?
Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna see if there's anything in the audio back there for her. Oh no, mic settings. Reduce mic background noise. Does that sound better? Echo cancellation. How's that?
Is that better?
It's not as loud.
Yeah, that's a little better. Yeah.
There's a little bit of feedback.
All right.
All right.
Hey, Patrice, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So what do you have on the docket now for Voices for Children?
So actually, before we get started, I wanted to tag into what you guys were talking about, because a lot of people don't know my main career. I am a rehab massage therapist. I spent 7 years in the drug and alcohol recovery centers, and I can tell you firsthand, a few years back when chiropractors and massage therapists, we got kicked out of PIP liability. So we could not process claims for car accidents at that time, right? So Palm Beach County was one of the counties that was huge. You saw hundreds of chiropractors opening sober homes because it was radical income very quickly. And then, they got back into PIP. We didn't, they did. And all of a sudden they just let the sober homes go. But I've had many clients tell me firsthand what goes on in there. And I have many clients that I've worked out through the Treasure Coast telling me how they would get clean, they would go back north or at the airport, and somebody's trying to get them to test dirty to come back again. So they could keep that revolving, because you can bill the insurance up to 3 times in the same house before they start questioning things.
Well, I think that's what that bill was about too, to stop the double dipping.
Yeah, it was the biggest farce I've ever seen. It's one of the reasons I stopped working with them, because I couldn't be a part of it. I was watching people's lives. I had many clients that had lost their lives to drug and alcohol addictions, and I watched these people just making money off of their lives, and I just couldn't deal with it. So just wanted to throw that out there. So, but
that was good.
As far as Voices for Children, so this is my first official week as the director. I've been, volunteer status, which I still am, but kind of just officially heading things up. So one of the things the board and I really want to do, and that is kind of stand on our mission. We're here to be a voice for the children of 4 counties, the ones who can't speak up for themselves. And so what we're putting together is June 24th, we have a roundtable discussion. And that is going to be the planning stage for our first ever summit. It's called Voices Abound, a voice for the voiceless. So we're just going to bring light to the community. It's kind of a multi-part. Identify the problem of human trafficking in our area and child abuse, how this is affecting our community. And what can our community do about it, whether it's your child or not? What can we all do? We all see kids sitting at the bus stop. Do you know what to look for? Do you see something? Do you see a weird vehicle? What do you do? But we're all so tied up in our phones and our lives, and oh, I'm so busy. It's not my problem. It is our problem, because you know what? Nonsense keeps coming here. That's going to affect everybody in every way. So we want to kind of shed light on this. This is already shaping up to be a yearly event. We haven't even gotten through the round table yet.
Now that is so important, because foster children are likely, foster children are likely more vulnerable to human trafficking than a child with a very stable home and secure home life, So, how does Voices of Children work to prevent exploitation of foster children and educate children and caregivers about these risks, like the event you're doing? What's the feedback when you have these events, and how do you feel?
Well, this is our first ever. We don't work with just foster children anymore. We used to be aligned with Guardian Ad Litem. Last year, there was a state mandate that separated Guardian Ad Litem from the courts. They are standalone now. So we still answer their call if they have something they need help with. But we work with basically any child who has a need. Anybody can present a need to us and say, hey, we just had somebody literally sent a request and said, hey, I've got this kid who needs shoes for prom. Just did not have the money to go to prom, which is crazy to me. And in this world that we live in, you got to ask for shoes. But like I said, this is our first ever doing something like this. But I've already started working with, we have a callback, a verification of address from Aaron Grall's office. We have several calls out, and different nonprofits that want to be involved. We've got teachers that want to be on the panel, community leaders we're inviting. So like I said, the June 24th event is really the roundtable planning. And then we're going to probably do it in August, September as a back to school type event. I'm really looking forward to it, and this is going to be, like I said, one of a series that we want to do. We want to unite the community. We want to bring awareness. I had somebody a couple of weeks ago tell me that kind of thing does not go on here. This is Indian River County. It does not go on here. But with February 19th, we just had a gentleman in Sebastian get sentenced to 360 something years for going to the Philippines and videotaping the rape and torture of children, and then coming home and selling this. And it's like, I mean, take away the fact that, like, what goes on in your head, that's what you're attracted to. But it does go on. It goes on everywhere. And unfortunately, it's becoming easier and easier for the predators. And one of the ways it's getting easier is because we are so distracted and so busy with our schedules and our phones and what's going on with me in my world, or that's not my child, or that doesn't affect me. It does. There's an old saying. Go ahead.
What are the key warning signs you can tell, like the warning signs or the red flags you can tell parents or family or the community?
I actually learned this from Special Agent Ruiz from Homeland Security. I got to witness him do a presentation. He's been invited into this, and I hope he has the time. One of the number one sites is Pinterest now. But there's like top 15, but Pinterest is like one of the sales sites.
Oh,
I was like, excuse me, Pinterest?
never
Leave
thought of
my
that.
Pinterest alone.
right.
But I know, right? Like, so you go on there and you see some craft and it's like $1,200. Well, you kind of know what that is, kind of like what Wayfair did at one point.
Yeah.
And then Minecraft,
Oh, yeah.
It's a
people
game.
handing
That's a
out.
game.
Yeah.
It's
They're
a game.
online. Yeah.
Roblox, Call of Duty, Fortnite, Minecraft, and there's vaults inside Minecraft.
So there goes the technology playing a role in trafficking.
And they said they will take years to groom these kids. They will become friends with them, and it will be years online.
Wow.
And there's jewelry that they have to signify what they're attracted to. But these are things, there are telltale signs that we can look for. You know, when somebody is going through the store and you just see that person in the same aisle as you more than once or twice, that's probably key. They're not typically shopping for what you're shopping for. They're following you. When you see somebody out in public and they're got a camera phone out and there's a bunch of kids on a playground, that you at least be aware of it. They may just be filming their kid, but very often they're filming other kids for sale. You know, they're planning and they work in groups. And there's just so many things, and that's what the summit is about educating. This year we're going to educate the public. Next year we're already planning out the same idea, education, but also breakout workshops for the kids. It's one thing to say, look for this, but now what do I do? I'm a 10-year-old. I'm online playing Minecraft. I'm talking to John. I think he's another 10-year-old. Okay. He's sending me some vault code. What do I do? I've been told that this might not be a good thing, but what do I do?
Right.
It's not enough to say, here's the problem. We have to arm the community with the tools of what to do. That's what we're trying to do, you know, head it off at the pass.
Yeah.
So are you guys working with any local schools or churches at this time, or is that just a
we have several churches that sponsored us in the past. Like I said, I'm relatively new in this role, so I'm kind of not really rewriting things, but in a way I am rewriting things. We have a few teachers that I know of personally that I've shared my idea with, and they were like, I want to be on the panel. I want to talk about what I see in a middle school. I have a teacher from Gifford Middle that wants to be here, and she's going to talk about what she sees. We've contacted National Sexual Assault Center out of Tallahassee. They sent us 3 boxes of handouts of, you know, like stopping sexual violence in general, just materials to kind of bring awareness. We have some I cannot think of her name. I'm so sorry. She's a specialist with the court system here in Indian River County. Her whole job is sexual crime, and she's wanting to be a speaker at the event. And I'm so excited because she has firsthand. She can tell us firsthand from the court side of things what she sees. We've invited Hibiscus House. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have one of the CEOs there. The idea with this summit is just stand on our mission. We need to put our money where our mouth is, and you know, it'll be a luncheon. It's going to be a lot of fun, as much fun as this subject can be. But it's going to be one of many things that we're going to be doing. So.
Yeah, it's really important. And, you know, teachers are like the frontline warriors because they see a lot on the school campus, and
they see
to arm them with the skills to be able to hone in on something that's not right, or to be able to ask the right questions that lead them to understand this child is in danger is absolutely so important.
Yeah, they get specialized training, but the parents don't. You know, the parents don't necessarily know, and you know, we need to change that. We need to flip that script and say, okay, you know what? The teachers are there. They have them for 8 hours a day, but they're really not there to raise your child. But we know classrooms can get overcrowded. Things can slip through the cracks. Plus, we have that age group. There's a lot of stuff for little kids, but we have that preteen age group that's very easy to slip through the cracks. It's very simple. It's, you know, they're going through puberty. They don't want to talk. You don't know what is their normal, or is there something really going on.
Well, and
and
all
we
this
need to.
all this weird stuff that's going on too with the transgender, talking about this stuff at a young age. It's a form of grooming
It's
to get
overwhelming.
into their head, and now they don't, especially in puberty. Who knows anything about themselves during puberty? We're the most confused people when we go through puberty, and then you've got all these life issues, and kids just have so much more on their plate, and stress, and then now for somebody to jump in and say, oh, I really care about you, but guess what, there's something else to be confused about.
Yeah, and that's how they work. That's how they operate. Their modem is just, oh, okay, well, you have a void. Let me be a shoulder. Let me be somebody to listen to. Let me
Right.
identify with you.
Let's
Let me
talk about
pretend.
it.
My daughter is 28. My youngest one's 28, and I can remember when she was like 11, she got a Facebook page, and I was so against it, but she did it. Okay, Facebook had just started. She got a Facebook page, and it was like 3 months in, and she came to me and she goes, Mom, I think I have a problem. Okay, what's going on? Well, there's this guy, and he says that he's my age, but then there's certain things in the conversation that just don't sound like a kid my age. So
Mhm.
long story short, they've been talking for a couple months. We had to get the sheriff's department involved. Turns out he's some 80-something-year-old guy in New York wanting to come and meet her in Florida.
Wow.
I'm like, oh no, you're off of Facebook.
That's crazy. Yeah, but that's
It's
it's the technology. The technology is what what it attracts these type of situations, and then we not, like you said, we're not paying attention. We're distracted by the world and by all the other psychological operations that are going on around us, and the subconscious programming. And that's what happens. These kids fall into this programming, and they think that that's okay to do these things, and then next thing you know, they're caught in a trap, and then they develop the childhood trauma, and that's what ends up
yeah.
happening. And then
Well,
the
the
trauma
first rule
carries
of
on.
war: divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Divide your community. Divide parents from kids. Divide kids from kids. Parents from parents. Divide and conquer. It works every time. It's a no-fail system.
100%.
And unfortunately, they know how to use technology to do that.
Mhm.
And we just need to be very diligent and aware and have those tools.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's one thing to say, all right, here's the problem. But what do you do?
What's the solution?
We're seeing all this stuff in the news. Kids that were trafficked at NASCAR events, at tennis events. I know in my job, my main job, I have to work with the state of Florida. We have a whole set of human trafficking rules we have to follow now as a therapist. We have to go through extra training now and things that we have to look for. But it's like, okay, we looked for it. We found it. Now what do we do? How do we stop this? Because this is right up there with the fentanyl crisis. It's just as bad.
That's a big issue too, and then with the vapes that came along, because kids could be putting stuff in their vapes. So,
Targeted on that.
Patrice, I was wondering, when you start working with the schools, are you going to be talking to the teachers about how to, spot these issues? And is there going to be like any events to try to address it with the kids? And if there are, is there going to be like a parental consent, or like, because some parents
Well,
are
we've talked about it, and I really want when we get up to the kids workshop, it's going to be a parent and child. They're going to go through this together. So this is the first stage. Second stage, or second wave, if you will be bringing in the experts, kind of like the tail end of this. We're going to be planning into the next stage already, and getting those experts to help me out and go, okay, help me conduct some workshops with parent and child. And part of that, the big part of that, is that communication. We don't always know how to talk to our kids, and our kids don't always know how to talk to us. And again, we get really busy. We don't always listen as well as we should, but we need to go back to that time to sit down every day. Hey, what happened today? What was the positive? What was the negative today? And just listen, not judging, just listen, and creating that environment that your kids can come to you and tell you anything. And then the parents can pick up on those little things and be like, oh, okay. I know, like, my grandson's come home and told me, oh yeah, this is what went on in school today, or there was these kids and they're selling vapes in the bathroom, and I'm like, okay, well, where'd you do? I went and used a different bathroom because I didn't want to be there. He's guilty by association. I didn't have to do anything, but if I'm in there and they get caught, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm like, yeah. So it's just, you've got to breed that communication, but we want to have those workshops, and we're always open to suggestions. And, I think that we're going to down the road look at possibly doing one on the drug issues in the schools. Get some teachers together and some community leaders, and let's talk to the kids. Have you ever been through the In Plain Sight trailer? That was scary. I mean, so we got to kind of tag into stuff like that. I have a million ideas.
Is that the one that has all the like drug and paraphernalia? And
I went through there and I thought it was so good. And I was like, oh no. And he pulls up the headboard. And I'm like, that's not fair. And he pulls up it was a key fob. It was sitting on the dresser. I didn't bat an eye at it. He goes, why would a 13-year-old need a key fob?
Yeah.
Good point. Never thought about it.
Right.
My grandson told me in middle school, girls bringing stuff to school with alcohol in it and drinking all day. That's not what I was doing at 13.
My goodness.
So.
Well, guys, let's bring this to the round table, bring our guests up because all you guys have something a little bit in common to talk about and share. So let's bring our guests up to the round table. Oh, hello, everybody.
How you doing? Hello. Hi, Patrice.
Where's
Patrice.
Hang on. We got a round table. We're missing somebody here. Where did oh, I guess we lost John when we switched over. So all right, so we've got Patrice, we've got George, we've got John. You guys heard what Patrice is doing, and it's really important what she's doing, and she's heard what you guys are doing as well. But we all have to deal with drugs and fentanyl and the predators out there that are not just feeding on the addicted, but they're feeding on the children as well.
So, if I may, thank you for Patrice and John for being genuine and wanting to help. But I can tell you my experience in this county. I've been here 40 years. And in 4 years, after going to Washington, D.C. and connecting with many credentialed law enforcement, this county doesn't want to hear it. I'm just going to tell you, you could do it.
That's why we're here, George, because we're going to make it heard.
Well, so I can tell you, when you bring Derek Maltz to speak and no law enforcement shows up, this was the former director of DEA. There's something behind the scenes. So I'll tell you about the school system because of my research. The reason why they don't want to bring awareness about opiate and fentanyl, because the people, and I'm just going to be very careful, the mental health services here get money. Follow the money.
Always.
So if Patrice or John were to devote time to help people so other people would not be hurt, they're not profiting from it. I don't profit from traveling nationally talking about fentanyl and opiate. Derek Maltz does not profit from speaking fentanyl nationwide. So we have to look at the bigger picture. Why don't they allow individuals like us to go speak in the school system? Well, there's a reason why. John and I have had great conversation about this. When you follow the money, and we don't want to profit of the demise of others, and I mean that, going in, maybe speaking for an hour. I've talked to county commissioners, sheriff department, police department, city council. None of them want to hear about what you have to say. I have the data. I have the emails. I have the texts. When my friend Bonjoni comes one day, I'm going to say, here's the information. They don't want to address it. And it's been going on for 4 years. So I'm willing to listen, but I'm not holding my breath with this county anymore. I think we need to bring the Justice Department, federal agents, FBI, DOJ, and even DEA. That's my own observation with 4 years of study.
Well, it's good that that legislative bill went through. Do you know if there was anybody from our county supporting that, Robbie Brackett, or anybody in our county that knew about it, that was working on it?
So I have talked to Mayfield, I've talked to Grohl, I don't talk to Brackett. There's some people I don't bother with, but I talk to people who I genuinely sense is an authenticity. And they've expressed some interest, but I don't need votes. I'm not looking for political position. I'm looking for the sanctity of human life. Human trafficking, sex trafficking, that happens in sober homes, by the way. Some sober homes, let me be very careful. But if they don't want to talk about it, like Patrice said, how can you bring awareness? Maybe there's something they're hiding that maybe some of them are doing. That's what it boils down to me.
Well, when you were saying that, I was thinking about, like the hibiscus, those centers that are helping young kids that are, staying with them, and they're transporting them back and forth. Have we heard any cases coming out of those places regarding kids being trafficked or drug trafficked?
Well, I know with Voices, we've had a request recently. And obviously the details had to be very vague. We were not given a lot of information. Just it came from an FBI agent locally. It was 2 children that were rescued from a trafficking situation. And there were certain needs that we were able to financially provide for them immediately, because it was an immediate need. I've worked with Hibiscus House for several years off and on. And I've been down in Palm City with their where the younger children are, and I've also been here in Vero at the Hibiscus House. And I've had staff tell me, obviously, a lot of the details are kept for confidentiality, and I really don't need to know them. But there are children of multiple ages that have been either taken out of homes for abuse, for being trafficked, for being sold by their parents.
Wow.
And that, again, people's, it doesn't happen here. Yes, we had a guy here in Vero, 30-something years old this year, was arrested and found guilty for assaulting his 3-year-old son and selling the videos.
And
I
that
mean,
has
it's
such a
just,
lasting impact on those children. And those
Oh,
are
it
correct.
never
likely the
goes away.
people that grow up and
never
end
goes.
up in these sober homes.
Well, that's what George and I were talking about, because in my experience working with the recovery centers, I was telling George, the very first day I walked into, I can honestly say I had a very different viewpoint of an addict. And over the years, I have talked to so many, and I've always been, what led you to this life? What happened? And I would say easily over 90% of the people I've worked with have had some trauma, mostly from childhood. Somewhere there's something that did not process. There's something there that is residual. And that's what I was saying. Head this off at the past. We have so many people in our community that are functional adults, addiction or not, they're functional adults that have buried trauma.
Right.
Yeah.
What do
You
we
know,
talk about?
and it's just,
George and I just talked about that the other day, about it's generational trauma. It's not
Mhm.
really just childhood trauma; it's generational trauma. So that
yeah.
we're in the business of healing the generational trauma. What we're doing by speaking out, by talking about it, George doing what he's doing, Patrice, what you're doing, what we do here at the board report is we're talking about it because we have to release that generational trauma so that it doesn't carry on into the
You
future.
have to break the cycle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
the way you do, the way we do that is what you guys are doing. You bring it out of the dark and you put it in the light, because it can't survive in the light. It can't.
True.
There's no way. So
That is such a good point. One of the things that I tell my guys is, if you dig in here and you look at it, there's a spiritual solution to all of these problems, and we need to be open-minded to that. But I tell the guys, you have the opportunity to change the entire trajectory
Mhm.
of your family just by getting sober and staying sober. Well, how do we do that? Well, we have to stop drinking, number one, and we have to, and if we need to, seek outside help
Yeah.
to deal with those, those childhood traumas. Patrice, you're doing some great work. And as I was listening to you earlier, I was thinking, we're going to have to open up some more halfway houses.
Yeah.
Women
Because,
too.
oh, exactly. And it's a shame that, you know, and I've only lived here for 16 years, but this is probably nationwide
Oh, for
that
sure.
there is a need. There is a need for help. There is a need for guidance. And, you know, we as adults, we need to just get off the phone and pay attention to our children and return to the old ways, you know. And I
Yes.
say that, you know, I don't know, but you know, I grew up in the '70s, and yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it was, you know, I knew if I didn't get home on time, I was going to have my butt, you know, there
Mhm.
was some, you know,
I
some
grew up where you
consequence.
had to, you came home by the time those street lights were on.
That's right, every time,
Because,
you
but
know.
you know, and you could go do whatever you want all day. You walked in the door, your mom already knew what you did because your neighbor called your mom and told on you before you
there
got
were
home.
there were consequences for our behavior, and even now there are always going to be consequences for our behaviors. But it's unfortunate that you know, addiction is so prevalent, and many of those addictions, just like you said, Patrice, come from
Mm,
childhood traumas.
mm.
So we need to take care of each other from
We need to break the
kindergarten
stigma.
up.
Yeah, we
The-
need to break that stigma that we have to do everything on our own.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we can't.
We don't have to do things alone. First of all, we're never alone, but we don't have to do things alone. And it's okay to ask for help from somebody else.
Absolutely.
But that's where over the years, society, we've just broken down that trust. And that's what just lets the evil in, you know,
Yeah.
and
So,
that's all by design.
yeah. So the lack of accountability and what you both are saying is true. So, no. So when someone reaches out for help, and those who are in position or authority or officials do not address it or honor that voice that is in need, there's no accountability for them. And I'm talking about, you know, with those officials. I can't name them, but they're here in Vero. So when you bring a situation to an official and you give them, this girl is being exploited, she's being sexually trafficked, and they don't do anything about it, I think they should be held accountable. That's my own observation,
Mhm.
and I'm working with
Absolutely.
federal agents on that, because if here they don't want to hear about it, they're not going to hear about anything else. They're not. We've been trying to campaign about the fentanyl awareness. Murder one. Well, it just was made in Florida by a sheriff, not in this jurisdiction, in another one, that anyone dealing drugs and creates an overdose, that dealer goes murder one.
Yep.
I've been campaigning for that for years. I mentioned
Wasn't
that,
that
and
in Polk County?
I
Wasn't
think
that what
I'm not
when
sure the count, but it
Grady
could
out
have
of
been
Polk County
Brady.
did that?
Grady
I'm not.
Judd.
Yeah, it could have been him. But what I've been trying to do is do what you guys are doing. So what they do is they're so busy, like you said, and like parents can get, that, you know, I've been a thorn on their ass. Because you see, when you collect data and you keep information and you keep texts and you keep phone messages and you keep all this, there's going to be an accountability. If a woman gets used up or sex trafficked or a child or something, and they know about it and they didn't do anything about it, they're going to have to answer to it now. And the reality is that they don't want to talk about it in this community. That's been my 4 years. I'm glad that this podcast is available, but I could tell you this: when you have federal Washington D.C. people come and talk about an issue that's national, and they don't give it any attention, it makes you wonder how interested in they are in the human aspect of life.
Well, there is strength in numbers. I have learned this in my lifetime. The more vocal you are and the more people that are banded together in a tribe, the more results you will get.
That's
And
true.
that's like what you guys are doing tonight on here.
Mhm.
You're pulling together a tribe of people that are like-minded, And those that are like-minded enough, they're going to join in this, and they're going to be observant, and they're going to be aware, and they're going to start. And change starts very slowly, but as long as change starts, then we take the power away from those that are doing all this.
And
I
you
think
need
the
to make
toughest thing is the interagency corruption, in some of these
100%.
agencies where you're supposed to be trusted, and they're run with
100%.
some federal money.
Yep.
And now you're battling the parents or the homes or whatever else it's coming from, and you're battling it from the own agencies that are supposed to be helping, which is what concerned me about the county taking over, getting really involved in a sober home, because now you can have another new interagency.
It's going to happen. Follow the
You
money.
know what I'm saying? It's going to be harder to detect and harder to stomp on, because it's the county that's going to be covering it up if something does go awry.
I spoke at that. I spoke at that board meeting. Nobody on that board has any knowledge about addiction. So I go to the leading guy and I said, let me give you my resume. And he saw I took courses with Sheriff's Department and other agencies. And I go, I want you to tell me what your motive is in opening this up. Like John talked previously. He walked away.
Well, it's our responsibility as residents of this county and residents of this earth, for that matter, for us to lead our lives and set the right example. You remember the president that said, I am with the government, I'm here to help you. Some of the most terrifying words that there are. We cannot count on our government to do the work that we're doing. So it's our job spiritually, and it's our job to help other God's kids, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
100%.
And I don't want to sound too churchy or anything like that, but all of this is a spiritual disease. Whether you're trafficking children, you're sitting there taking pictures of the playground, or you're panhandling down here on the corner of the street, there is a problem. And this problem can only be helped by people like us. I'm gonna tell a quick story, if I may. There was an event that happened at the beach, and all of these starfish washed up on the shore. All these live starfish, and there was a man down there, and there was another man watching him, and he would walk down the beach, and he would take one of the starfish and throw it into the water where he could live, not die. And the other gentleman came up to him and says, there are thousands of starfish here. How are you going to save all of them? He says, I won't. What difference can you make? He says, I may not make much of a difference, but it sure made a difference to this one.
I always say to reach one is to reach all. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
So we may not be able to save all the puppies in the pound. I hate to say that, but we can do the work that we can do.
Right.
And George, and we're all doing this work. You guys doing this podcast, bringing attention to these problems, talking about it, connecting, humans connecting with each other. This is how we get better, and this is how we can heal. We need to watch out for each other.
Bingo.
Yeah, we plant the seeds of change is what we do.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, I think that's a great way to close out the show tonight, everybody. Patrice, wow, great job. John, thank you for so much of what you're doing for people out there trying to get their lives back together. And George, thank you for all of your advocacy and your data. And you are just rock solid on top of it, blowing it away. And it's a great show. And I hope that a lot of people get a lot of information from this. And we'll have to do this again so we can have some updates on what's going on with Patrice and Voices.
And I hope all of you will join me for the roundtable meeting.
Definitely.
We'll
be there.
Run those dates by us again.
It's June 24th. It's going to be 11 to 1. I just need an RSVP, so I make sure I have materials for you and refreshments. And we're going to be at the Plaza on 17th.
Okay, right across from the funeral home.
Yeah.
Yes, they've been very kind to donate the space for the meeting.
Nice.
That's wonderful. They're
It's a
so
beautiful
generous.
space.
Yep.
Yes, that's Strunk Funeral Home. He owns
Yep.
that, and he's very generous. Oh wow.
Kevin's a good guy.
He's totally always given back to the community. So Kevin
Yes.
Strunk, thank you
Mhm.
for being a community contributor. Everything you do for us is just outstanding. So guys, thank you very much for joining us today on
Thank you,
Board.
Patrice. Thank you, John. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, John.
Thank you guys.
All
Good to
right,
see
have a
you.
good
Thank you.
evening.
Okay.
All right, guys.
All right, so everybody, that was the board report. I hope you got your fill for tonight. Hit the like, share, and subscribe tab to get notified when the board report goes on air. But remember, we also go on air every Friday at 7 p.m. That's right, you can catch us every Friday at 7 p.m. And also, I'm going to ask you to visit IndianRiverConnections.com. That's IndianRiverConnections.com to visit our network of podcasts like To the Point Podcast, TGI Now, the Connecting People and Places podcast, and of course, Binford Chronicles. And again, the board report airs every Friday at 7 p.m. And make sure you check us out on Rumble, X, Facebook, and YouTube. Have a great evening. Thanks again for joining us.
Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more. Sponsored by Gus Curran's House of Champions.